2:13 a.m. That was the exact time Daniel's life changed forever. His phone kept ringing in the dark while he slept peacefully, unaware that just a few miles away, his father was lying on the floor struggling to breathe. 7 missed calls. Then one terrifying message. Dad collapsed. In that moment, Daniel felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Real fear. The kind that makes your hands shake. The kind that makes your heart feel cold. As he drove through empty streets in the middle of the night, one thought kept repeating inside his mind. Please don't let me be too late. But when he finally reached the hospital, what the doctor told him completely shattered him. This didn't happen suddenly, the doctor said. His body had been warning him for years. Warning him. That sentence changed everything. Because Daniel realized his father ignored every single sign. The chest pain. The stress. The exhaustion. The sleepless nights. He kept saying the same thing millions of people say every day. I'll rest later. I'm fine. I just need to work harder. But later almost never came. And what Daniel discovered after that night is something every person watching this needs to hear before it's too late. This story is not just about a man who almost died. It's about all of us. People waking up exhausted every morning. People silently drowning in stress. People sacrificing their health, happiness, and peace chasing a future they may never even reach. And the scariest part? Most people don't realize they're destroying themselves until life forces them to stop. Tonight, you're going to hear a story that might completely change the way you see your life. A story about regret, about family, about success, about the dangerous lie society teaches everyone, that your health can wait. But before this video ends, you'll understand one painful truth that Daniel learned inside a hospital room while watching machines keep his father alive. Money can return. Jobs can return. Opportunities can return. But time never comes back. So before you ignore this story, before you skip this video thinking it's just another motivational story, ask yourself one question honestly. When was the last time you truly felt alive? Because what happened to Daniel's father can happen to anyone. Maybe even someone watching right now. And trust me, the final lesson of this story is something you will never forget. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Daniel's phone started vibrating violently against the wooden table beside his bed. He ignored it at first. Half asleep, exhausted from another stressful workday, he pulled the blanket over his head and tried to go back to sleep. But then the phone rang again. And again. And again. Annoyed, Daniel finally opened his eyes and looked at the screen. 7 missed calls. All from his younger sister, Emily. His heart instantly sank. Emily never called this late unless something was terribly wrong. With trembling fingers, he answered the phone. Emily, what happened? But instead of words, he heard crying. Loud, panicked, uncontrollable crying. Then finally, through broken breaths, she managed to speak. Daniel, Dad collapsed. For a second, the world around him went silent. What? He was holding his chest, and then he just fell. He can barely breathe. Daniel jumped out of bed so fast that the phone almost slipped from his hand. His chest tightened with fear. I'm coming right now. He threw on a jacket, grabbed his keys, and ran out of the apartment. Outside, the streets were dark and empty. Rain poured heavily from the sky, hitting the windshield as Daniel sped through red lights and silent roads. His hands shook on the steering wheel. His mind raced with terrifying thoughts. What if this is the end? What if I never speak to him again? What if I'm already too late? For the first time in years, Daniel thought about all the moments he had ignored his father's calls because he was too busy. The family dinners he skipped because of work. The vacations he promised to take next year. The conversations he rushed through while staring at emails. Suddenly, none of his deadlines mattered anymore. None of the meetings mattered. None of the money mattered. Because the only thing Daniel wanted in that moment was one more chance to see his father alive. When he finally reached the hospital, ambulances flashed bright red lights across the parking lot. Nurses rushed patients through automatic doors while worried families sat crying in waiting areas. Daniel ran inside, breathing heavily. "My father, Michael Carter, they brought him in. Where is he?" A nurse quickly pointed toward the emergency wing. Daniel rushed down the hallway and froze. Doctors surrounded his father's body. Machines beeped rapidly. One nurse shouted numbers. Another prepared injections. His father looked pale and motionless lying on the hospital bed. Daniel had never seen him like this before. To him, his father was always strong. The man who worked 2 jobs when money was tight. The man who never complained. The man who always said, "I'm fine." But now that same man looked fragile. Human. Weak. And suddenly Daniel realized something terrifying. Strong people break too. A doctor stepped outside the room a few minutes later. "Are you family?" he asked seriously. Daniel nodded quickly. The doctor took a deep breath. "You brought him just in time." Daniel felt a tiny wave of relief. But then the doctor continued. "He suffered a major heart attack. Another 20 or 30 minutes, and we probably wouldn't have saved him." Daniel's legs nearly gave out beneath him. Emily started crying beside him. But what the doctor said next shocked Daniel even more. "This didn't happen overnight," the doctor explained. "His body has been warning him for years." Daniel looked confused. "What do you mean?" The doctor glanced toward the room. "High stress, poor sleep, exhaustion, probably high blood pressure too. These things slowly damage the body over time. Most people ignore the warning signs until it becomes life-threatening." Warnings. That word echoed inside Daniel's mind. Because suddenly, memories came rushing back. His father holding his chest after climbing stairs. The headaches. The constant fatigue. The nights he fell asleep sitting on the couch because he worked too much. The times Emily begged him to visit a doctor. And every single time, his father gave the same answer. "I'm okay. I just need rest." But he never rested. For over 30 years, Michael Carter worked non-stop. Early mornings. Late nights. Endless overtime. He always said he was doing it for the family. And maybe he was. But somewhere along the way, he forgot that a family doesn't just need money. They need you. Daniel slowly sat down in the hospital waiting room, staring blankly at the floor. Around him were dozens of other families. Some crying. Some praying. Some waiting silently for news that could change their lives forever. And something disturbed him deeply. Almost everyone there was saying the same thing. "We thought there was more time." An older woman whispered through tears. "He kept saying he'd slow down after retirement." A teenage boy sat beside his mother saying, "Dad said the chest pain was nothing." A man across the room stared at the wall and muttered, "She ignored the stress for years." Daniel realized this wasn't rare. This was happening everywhere. People were destroying themselves quietly while pretending everything was fine. Ignoring stress. Ignoring exhaustion. Ignoring pain. Believing they were somehow invincible. Daniel suddenly remembered something his father once told him when he was younger. Success means sacrificing now so you can enjoy life later. Back then, Daniel believed it. Now he wasn't so sure anymore. Because what if later never comes? Hours passed slowly. The hospital lights felt cold and lifeless. At around 5 a.m., a nurse finally allowed Daniel to see his father briefly. Michael looked exhausted. Weak. Small. His breathing was slow, supported by machines. Daniel walked closer to the bed, struggling to hold back tears. For the first time in his life, he was afraid of losing the man who raised him. Then something unexpected happened. His father slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Daniel for a few silent seconds before whispering weakly, "I'm sorry." Daniel frowned immediately. "Sorry for what?" His father swallowed painfully. "For spending my whole life working and forgetting how to live." Those words shattered Daniel completely. Because deep down, he knew his father wasn't the only one living that way. Millions of people were trapped in the same cycle. Wake up. Work. Stress. Sleep. Repeat. Chasing success while slowly losing themselves. And most of them wouldn't realize it until life forced them to stop. That night changed Daniel forever. Because as he sat beside his father's hospital bed watching machines keep him alive, he understood one painful truth. Your body whispers before it screams. And the people who ignore those whispers long enough. The next morning, sunlight slowly entered the hospital room through the half-open blinds. Everything felt strangely quiet. The loud panic from the night before was gone, but the fear remained. Daniel sat beside his father's bed holding a cup of cold coffee he never drank. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red from staying awake all night. Across the room, machines continued making soft beeping sounds that reminded him how close they came to losing everything. His father, Michael Carter, looked completely different now. Just 2 days ago, he was the strong man everyone depended on. The man who carried groceries without asking for help. The man who fixed problems, paid bills, and worked endlessly without complaining. But now he looked fragile, older, broken. For the first time in Daniel's life, his father looked afraid. A nurse entered the room quietly, checked the monitors, then left again. Silence filled the room. Finally, Michael slowly turned his head toward Daniel and spoke in a weak voice. "You should go home and rest." Daniel shook his head immediately. "I'm not leaving." His father forced a small smile. "You always were stubborn." Daniel tried to smile back, but he couldn't. Too many emotions were trapped inside him. Fear, guilt, regret. Then, after a long pause, his father suddenly whispered something unexpected. "I wasted so much time." Daniel looked up. "What do you mean?" Michael stared at the ceiling for several seconds before answering. "I spent my whole life chasing money, thinking one day I'd finally slow down and enjoy life." He swallowed painfully. But that day never came. Daniel stayed silent. Because deep down, he knew it was true. 4 years, his father lived the exact same routine. Wake up before sunrise. Work all day. Come home exhausted. Eat quickly. Sleep for a few hours. Repeat. Every single day. Even birthdays felt rushed. Family dinners became rare. Vacations were always postponed. "There's too much work right now," his father would say. "Maybe next year." But next year kept moving further away. Michael looked at Daniel again, his eyes filled with regret. "You know what the saddest part is?" Daniel didn't answer. "I thought sacrificing my happiness would protect this family." His voice cracked slightly. "But I didn't realize my family needed me more than my paycheck." Daniel looked away, trying to hide the tears forming in his eyes. Because he suddenly remembered moments he had forgotten for years. His father missing school events because of overtime. Answering work calls during family dinners. Falling asleep on the couch every night from exhaustion. And somehow, everyone accepted it as normal. Society praised people like his father. People called him hardworking, responsible, successful. But sitting in that hospital room, Daniel wondered something terrifying. What if success isn't worth it if it destroys your life? That thought stayed in his mind for days. After his father stabilized, Daniel returned home, but nothing felt normal anymore. For the first time, he started noticing how unhealthy everyone around him looked. On the subway, people stared blankly at phones with exhausted faces. At work, employees bragged about sleeping only 4 hours. Friends constantly talked about stress like it was some kind of achievement. One coworker laughed proudly and said, "I haven't taken a real vacation in 6 years." Everyone around him looked tired, emotionally drained, disconnected. But nobody stopped. Nobody questioned it. Because modern life teaches people something dangerous. Keep going no matter what. Even if your body is exhausted. Even if your mind is breaking. Even if your happiness disappears. Just keep running. Daniel began seeing his own life differently too. Every morning he woke up anxious. His chest felt tight constantly. He checked emails before brushing his teeth. Even during meals, his mind stayed trapped in work. At night, he couldn't sleep properly because stress followed him everywhere. And the scariest part? He thought this was normal. One evening after work, Daniel visited his parents' house to pick up some clothes for his father. The house felt unusually silent. As he walked through the living room, he noticed something sitting on the shelf. An old family photo. Daniel slowly picked it up. It showed him as a little boy sitting on his father's shoulders at a carnival. Both of them were smiling. Real smiles. Not forced. Not distracted. Just happy. Daniel stared at the picture for a long time. Then something painful hit him. He couldn't remember the last time he saw his father truly relaxed like that. Years of stress had slowly stolen the joy from him. And nobody noticed because it happened little by little. That realization broke Daniel emotionally. He sat alone in the empty house holding the photo while tears rolled down his face. Because suddenly he understood something heartbreaking. His father spent his entire life trying to create a better future, while sacrificing the present completely. And Daniel realized he was becoming exactly the same. Same stress. Same unhealthy habits. Same obsession with work. Same belief that happiness could wait. That night, Daniel barely slept. He kept hearing his father's words repeating inside his head. That day never came. The next morning, Daniel returned to the hospital. His father looked slightly better. Still weak, but more awake. Daniel sat beside him quietly. Then after a few minutes, Michael spoke again. "When you almost die," he whispered, "you stop thinking about money." Daniel listened carefully. "You don't think about promotions. You don't think about expensive cars. You don't think about status." His father looked directly into his eyes. "You think about the moments you missed." Silence filled the room again. And in that moment, Daniel understood the truth most people realize too late. Life is not just about surviving long enough to retire. It's about living while you still can. Because one day, every ignored warning catches up to you. And by then, sometimes it's already too late. A few weeks after his father's heart attack, Daniel returned to work. But something inside him had changed. The office looked exactly the same as before. The bright lights. The endless phone calls. The constant sound of keyboards clicking. Yet now, everything felt different. For years, Daniel believed this place represented success. A large salary. A respected position. A beautiful office in the city. It was the kind of life people admired online. But after spending nights in a hospital watching his father fight to survive, Daniel could no longer ignore the truth. He wasn't happy. Every morning, he woke up tired before the day even started. His chest constantly felt heavy with stress. He survived on coffee, skipped meals, and barely slept properly. Even when he came home at night, work followed him through endless notifications and emails. His mind never rested. And suddenly, he realized something terrifying. He was slowly becoming the younger version of his father. One afternoon, Daniel sat in an important business meeting while executives argued about profits and deadlines. But he wasn't listening. Instead, he kept staring at his reflection in the glass wall beside him. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. Tired expression. Empty stare. For the first time, he asked himself an honest question. If my life continues exactly like this for the next 10 years, will I even survive it? The answer scared him. After the meeting ended, his manager stopped him near the hallway. "Daniel, great work lately," he said. "We're considering you for another promotion." A few months ago, hearing those words would have made Daniel excited. Now he felt nothing. Because deep down, he understood what the promotion really meant. Longer hours. More stress. Less sleep. Less life. His manager smiled confidently. "You're young. This is the time to push harder. Push harder." That phrase stayed in Daniel's mind all evening. Because his father pushed harder too. And look where it led him. That night, Daniel sat alone in his apartment staring at his laptop screen filled with unread emails. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "Dad walked outside today for the first time." Daniel immediately drove to his parents' house. When he arrived, he saw his father slowly walking in the backyard under the evening sunlight. Carefully, weakly, but alive. Michael noticed Daniel and smiled faintly. "You look tired," he said. Daniel laughed quietly. "So do you." His father sat down slowly on a chair and looked at the sky for several seconds before speaking. "You know what almost dying teaches you?" Daniel stayed silent. Michael looked directly at him. "That nobody wishes they spent more time working." Those words hit Daniel deeply. Because for years, he convinced himself that stress was temporary. That happiness could wait. That rest was something people earned later. But now he realized something most people never understand until it's too late. Life isn't waiting for the perfect moment to begin. This is life. And if you keep sacrificing your health, peace, and happiness for someday, you may never actually live at all. That night, Daniel made the hardest decision of his life. The next morning, he walked into his office carrying a resignation letter. His hands shook slightly. Part of him felt terrified. He spent years building this career. Years chasing promotions. Years proving himself. Walking away felt impossible. When his manager read the letter, he looked stunned. "You're serious?" Daniel nodded. His manager leaned back in disbelief. "Daniel, people would kill for your position." Maybe they would. But Daniel finally understood something important. A job that destroys your mental and physical health is not success. It's survival. His coworkers thought he was making a huge mistake. "You're throwing everything away. You'll regret this. What are you going to do now?" Daniel honestly didn't know. And that scared him. But staying scared him even more. The first few weeks after quitting felt strange. For the first time in years, Daniel woke up without panic rushing through his chest. No alarms at 5 a.m. No late-night meetings. No endless pressure. At first, he didn't even know how to relax. His brain was addicted to stress. Even while resting, he felt guilty. Like he should always be working. That's when Daniel realized how deeply modern life conditions people to believe their worth depends entirely on productivity. If you rest, you feel lazy. If you slow down, you feel guilty. If you choose peace, people think you lack ambition. But Daniel continued changing his life step by step. He started exercising every morning. Not to impress anyone. Just to feel healthy again. He stopped eating fast food every day and learned to cook simple meals. He spent evenings with his parents instead of staring at screens. For the first time in years, he had real conversations with people he loved. And slowly, something unexpected happened. The constant anxiety inside him started disappearing. His sleep improved. His mind felt calmer. Even simple things began feeling meaningful again. Morning sunlight. Fresh air. Laughing with family. Quiet moments without stress. Things he ignored for years while chasing success. One afternoon, Daniel and his father sat together near a lake outside the city. The weather was peaceful. Birds moved across the water while sunlight reflected softly on the surface. His father looked healthier now. Still recovering, but stronger than before. After several quiet minutes, Michael finally spoke. "You know," he said softly, "I spent most of my life thinking success meant sacrificing everything." Daniel looked at him. "But I was wrong." His father smiled sadly. "Real success is waking up without hating your life." Daniel stayed silent. Because for the first time in years, he finally understood exactly what that meant. And deep down, he knew something important. The heart attack didn't just save his father's life. It saved his too. 1 year later, Daniel's life looked completely different. Not perfect. Not luxurious. But peaceful. And for the first time in years, peace felt more valuable than success. Every morning, he woke up early and went for a walk before the city became loud. He no longer grabbed his phone the second he opened his eyes. No endless emails. No panic. No racing heartbeat before sunrise. Just silence. Fresh air. Breathing. Simple things that once felt unimportant now meant everything to him. Daniel eventually found a smaller job working remotely for a local company. The salary was much lower than what he earned before, and many people still didn't understand his decision. Some friends quietly judged him. "You had such a successful career. You gave up too much. You could have been rich by now." At first, those comments bothered him. But then he remembered something powerful. People often admire lifestyles they secretly suffer through. From the outside, his old life looked impressive. Inside, it was destroying him. Now, despite earning less money, Daniel finally had something he never had before. Time. Time to sleep properly. Time to visit his parents. Time to think clearly. Time to actually feel alive. And slowly, he began noticing changes not just in himself, but in his father too. Michael was recovering better than doctors expected. Every morning, he walked around the neighborhood carefully, greeting people he had ignored for years because he was always too busy. He started gardening, reading books, spending evenings talking with family. One afternoon, Daniel watched his father laughing while teaching Emily's young son how to ride a bicycle. That moment hit him emotionally. Because for years, his father missed moments like this while chasing money and working endless hours. Now he finally understood what truly mattered. Not status, not promotions, not impressing strangers, but moments. Real moments with people you love. One evening during dinner, Michael suddenly became quiet. He stared at his plate for several seconds before speaking softly. "You know what scares me the most?" Daniel looked at him carefully. Michael sighed. "That I almost died before learning how to live." The room fell silent, because everyone understood exactly what he meant. For decades, Michael believed success meant sacrificing himself for the future. But the future kept moving further away. There was always another bill, another promotion, another responsibility, another reason to delay happiness. And without realizing it, he spent most of his life surviving instead of living. That truth haunted Daniel deeply, because he started seeing the same pattern everywhere. People rushing through life without ever slowing down enough to ask themselves one important question. Am I actually happy? Most people never ask that question honestly, because they're too distracted, too busy, too exhausted. Society trains people to chase more constantly. More money, more status, more followers, more achievements. But almost nobody teaches people how to protect their mental health, peace, relationships, or happiness. And that's why so many people look successful outside while feeling empty inside. A few days later, Daniel visited his parents again. As he entered the living room, his father handed him an old notebook. "What's this?" Daniel asked. Michael smiled faintly. "I started writing things after the heart attack." Daniel slowly opened the notebook. Most pages contained small thoughts, regrets, and memories written in shaky handwriting. Then one sentence caught his attention immediately. "If your success costs you your health, peace, sleep, and happiness, then it's not success at all." Daniel stared at those words silently, because they were true, painfully true. For years, he believed exhaustion was normal. Stress was normal. Burnout was normal. But now he realized something important. Just because society normalizes suffering doesn't mean it's healthy. The world celebrates people who overwork themselves. People proudly say things like, "I haven't slept properly in days. I work non-stop. I never take breaks." As if destroying yourself is something admirable. But Daniel learned the hard way that your body always keeps score. Ignore stress long enough, and eventually it breaks you. Ignore exhaustion long enough, and eventually your mind collapses. Ignore your health long enough, and one day your body forces you to stop. That night, Daniel sat alone outside looking at the city lights in the distance. Cars moved endlessly through the streets. Thousands of people still awake, still working, still stressing, still telling themselves they'll rest later. And suddenly Daniel felt emotional, because he realized how many people are trapped in the exact same cycle his father almost died from. Maybe some of them were watching this story right now, ignoring headaches, ignoring anxiety, ignoring exhaustion, ignoring loneliness, thinking they still have time. But life changes faster than people expect. A normal day can become a tragedy in seconds. A single phone call can change everything. Daniel learned that lesson at 2:13 a.m. the night his father collapsed. And ever since then, one truth stayed in his heart forever. The most dangerous lie people tell themselves is this: I'll take care of myself later. Because later is never promised. So if you're listening to this story right now, remember this carefully. Take care of your body before it forces you to stop. Protect your peace before stress destroys it. Spend time with the people you love while you still can. Rest without guilt. Slow down when life becomes too heavy. And never sacrifice your entire life just to chase things that won't matter in the end. Because at the end of life, nobody wishes they worked more. They wish they lived more. And sometimes, the stories people ignore today become the regrets they cry about tomorrow.